There's a difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. Multi means I'm sending you the stuff, I'm sending it off to the ortho, I'm sending off the endo. I don't give any of you a treatment plan, and you do your thing separately. And then you just send it back. I go, just do a crown, A3. 8 veneers, A3. Or I send it off to the oral surgeon, say, put 3 implants in. Don't tell them anything. And then you get it back and everything's in the wrong spot and the shade doesn't look good and everything doesn't look good. Interdisciplinary is where we're sitting and we're talking and collaborating and we're discussing how we get that result for the patient. And we're actually discussing it.
Welcome to Styledent Talks, a show for the dental community, bringing dental professionals together with authentic conversations about our industry. Whether you're just starting or want to reach the next level, this show is for you. Join us as we talk about real-life struggles we all face in our business and the challenges we go through when it comes to teamwork, products, techniques, and technology. All right, welcome Dr. Paresh Shah. Welcome to Styledent Talks. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know you're busy.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Appreciate it.
So we wanted to ask you a few questions. You're a busy guy. You lecture a lot. You're a speaker. And you're a very passionate dentist. You love what you're doing and involved in digital dentistry.
I do.
Yeah. So we just wanted to know how did you begin as a dentist and how did your career evolve and to where your practice is today? Tell us the story of Dr. Shah.
Wow. So you know what? I wasn't even thinking about dentistry. I've been at it for 29 years, but I was not even thinking about it. I was about to start a PhD in physiology. I finished my master's and I was about to do that. I was in my early mid-20s, and my wife, who's in corporate finance, my father, who is a retired physician, they sat me down and they actually filled out my dental school application.
They did.
That's funny.
I'm 25, so I'm 25. They filled it out and I got into school and I went into dentistry. And that's how I got into dentistry. It was a kick in the ass. And it was like, you don't look happy doing research. And what do you want to do medical research for? And I said, well, what about being a doctor? And my dad said, no, you don't want to be a doctor. This would you. And so, yeah, as an adult, this is what happened. So I got pushed there. It was the best thing that happened to me. So I'm practicing I did a GPR, learned how to do a lot of surgery, built a lot of confidence. And then 3 years out, I bought a practice. Still didn't know what I didn't know. And even today, I still don't know what I don't know. And, but I know a little more than I did 29 years ago.
Sure do.
And so I'm practicing and I'm looking at these patients and, you know, there's all sorts of weird things because from school, you learn how to treat teeth. You don't really learn how to treat the person and the mouth and the jaw and the face and the aesthetics. I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll get the odd instructor that will teach you that, but they're usually part-time. They just teach you how to treat teeth.
Yeah, get lost in the technicality, I guess.
Right. And so I'm looking at patients and their occlusions are off and this is off and I don't know what to do. But I got my practice and I'm like, I don't know what to do, but I can fix that tooth. I can clean that tooth. And that's what I would do. And I was getting really bored after 8 years of just drilling and filling teeth and scraping teeth. And that's when I got connected and got introduced to a whole new world of CE down in the States with some amazing people, including like Carl Misch, the University of Minnesota. I did a whole continuum over a 4-year period of treatment planning, occlusion, aesthetics, everything, Crown and Bridge, and then meeting people like Frank Spear, John Coyce, Paul Belvedere, so many people. And as you get and meet people outside of your little bubble, you realize there's more to dentistry and you can have fun. It can be a passion. You can still have your family life. You can still have your own private life, but you can actually do dentistry and really enjoy it and be more than just a job. And so that, it was about 8 years out that I got exposed to that. And then I kept going. And then, so what I would do is I'd keep bringing that back into the practice, and I would start bringing new procedures and new materials and new techniques. And that's kind of how I built over time. The speaking part came, I got an opportunity from a couple of people that are Canadian that I'm very grateful to. And you may know some of them. And one is Elliot Mechanic, Dr. Mechanic from Montreal. And the other one was George Friedman from Toronto. And the two of them, they really opened up some doors for me initially to have opportunities to speak and talk about my passion. And I'm forever grateful to the two of them. And I'm proud that they're Canadian. And they really helped me spring my career. And then after that, I got involved with more, different dental companies and meeting planners down in the States. And then eventually now Seattle Study Club for the last 12, 13 years. But it started back then with a couple of really excellent Canadian people that helped me a lot.
Well, you're definitely passionate because you talk about dentistry and you light up. So many years later, that's awesome. I mean, it's important to keep that passion, that's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you something. I made a choice. I still want to do lecturing. I still want to do teaching, but I don't want to do as much as I've been doing in the last 5 to 7 years. I've been lecturing for probably 15, 16 years. But I've been, on the road, like anywhere from 30 to 35 times a year. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to do that anymore. So I made the commitment to last year, almost a year ago in December, January. So about 10 months ago, that I want to slow down the travel. I don't want to be on the road 3 times a month. And, but I want to do a little bit, and I'm going to pick certain study clubs that I love because I love the interaction and the dialogue, and they're involved with specialists as well. So it's not just general dentists, it's everybody, because it elevates my level of thinking and my level of expertise and the dialogue, and I learn. But I decided I'm going to build a new practice to move into. So I'm doing that right now at this stage. I'm actually in the process of doing that. So it's kind of cool. So, and the reason you're saying about passion is, if I don't have that and I don't want to keep growing and keep increasing my knowledge base, I'm going to get bored pretty fast. I think the two of you can understand that. I mean, what are you trying to do in your lab? You're trying to bring in systematically new procedures, new techniques, new technology. Otherwise, you may as well have the casting ring and keep doing the same thing. You're still going to make money, but you're not going to stimulate your brain.
Exactly. I agree with that. Dentistry, especially now, is constantly evolving, changing at a rapid pace. You have to keep up. There's always so much that you can do, and there's so many things that we want to bring into the lab and develop, and it's really exciting.
We're lucky to be in the dentistry we are, because it allows us to do that because of all the changes lately with technology, with materials, and there's so many aspects in what we do that we can literally choose what we're passionate about and evolve in that aspect. So that's what's really really fun about what we're doing. Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's
interesting background.
I guess they were right.
Your parents were so right.
They were right. Just applying for you.
Thank them every day.
No, I do. So my wife and father don't let me forget that.
Of course. So one of your favorite subjects from what I saw on your website is staying relevant in a fast-changing world. So you expose participants to a variety of technology. So what would be the current technology that's really making a difference for clinicians today? Like, what's the hot thing right now?
Honestly, if you don't have an intraoral scanner, if you can figure out a way financially to get an intraoral scanner, that's the entry point to so much more dentistry that it is very difficult to stay as current with all the workflows that we have and opportunities that we have available to us if you don't have an intraoral scanner. You can still do it, but there's two things. One, that if you get, even just for basic crown and bridge, you get an analog impression, but you're manufacturing probably 90 of your restorations are probably digital. They're milled.
Mhm.
Okay. And even gold, all of my gold crowns over the last few years have been milled.
Mm-hmm.
So it's come off of them. So all of a sudden you take analog, you convert it to digital, and don't tell me that it's going to be perfect. Yes, it's clinically fine, but it's not as accurate if you get the digital to digital. So that's number one. But number two is all the other workflows, like the ability to be able to diagnose and treatment plan using all the records, CBCT, STL files, photographs, video, and be able to put it in software. You and I talked about that, Dimitri, about using Bellis 3D as one of them, Zircon's on, some of the other softwares, even ExoCAD and 3Shape. All of a sudden, importing all of that information. For example, what I do now with my orthodontist, my oral surgeon, my endo, and my perio is we have meetings virtual where all the records are there. So they've got the STL file of the pre-treatment. They've got an STL file of a digital smile design that you would have done for me in collaboration, going, hey, this is what the restorative treatment plan and endpoint is going to be. Now you've got the cone bead. Now the information is shared on a screen, and we're sitting at home or in our office and we're treatment planning with real records. We're not looking at a piece of paper with a picture, and we're not looking at a piece of wax. It's all in 3D.
Absolutely.
But how do you do that? Because you digitize everything. What's the entry point? A digital scanner. How do I communicate fast with you? Take an impression, send a scan. It goes to you within 15 minutes or an hour, right? Depending on the type of scanner and where it goes. So the entry point's that. I'm rambling. Stop me if you want to.
No, it's very interesting.
But the other thing is, I don't think people understand. And I talked to you about that when we talked a couple of weeks ago. I do all my single units for the last 4.5 years model free, and I don't have a single problem. The amount of time I spend delivering a single unit crown, I mean, this is it. Like honestly, I can tell you right now, I can go back the last 10 units I delivered. If I touch one for more than 10 seconds, I can count it on one hand. I don't spend time, but people don't understand that because they're like, oh my God, I can't afford it. And my lab is great. Well, if you really think about it, there's a lot of people that are still adjusting contacts and they're still adjusting their occlusion. And that takes time. And then, as you know, you have to polish it perfectly. Otherwise, it's going to wear opposing teeth. You can't just glaze it. You got to polish it. So that takes time and chair time, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if I can save, let's say it's a medium-sized practice with 2 hygienists, and they've got maybe, let's just say 200 crowns in a year. If you can save 15 minutes, either on the front end or on the back end on 200 crowns, how many hours is that in a year?
That's 15 times 200.
Let's say that, right?
We're not going to do the math.
So all of a sudden you do the math, and let's say you save a week of time. What's a week of time worth to you? That's a week of time with your family. That's a week of time. It could be 2 weeks. I don't know what that number is. I should figure it out. 200 times 15, right? So, well, that's 40 hours. That's a week. Okay, so all of a sudden, you got a week of dentistry in a practice. That week of dentistry, do you think it pays for a scanner?
Absolutely. Listen, I mean,
absolutely.
If I compare the investments that today's labs have to make, an intraoral scanner for a dentist is not a big investment.
It's not, but they don't think about that because all they're going is,
I mean, just to keep up with the digital, we just bought an Asiga printer, which is like $40,000.
Right.
Well, it's
right. But this is what they're looking at. They're looking at, oh, well, how much, what do the manufacturers do? They go and say, well, how much you spending on impression material? Well, I spent $1,500. No, but that's what they do, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then they go, well, $1,500 a month. What's the lease payment? $1,500 a month. And they're talking about that. They're not talking about the mind-blowing workflows that you have and the ability to, all of a sudden I take that scan and next thing you know, I send you a photograph of the patient with the face and one with that big retracted smile. And we're actually designing something in the face that will be pretty darn accurate.
Well, absolutely. And especially for more complicated cases, more complex cases where you can literally have an overlay of temporaries, of prototypes, all these things, you know, where you can match and have all that information right there,
Yeah.
you know, where you can have the patient's, I guess, existing denture, you can do a digital conversion, you can do so many things.
Correct.
Which are
Yeah.
not
So when you ask
right?
what's the one digital thing, I still feel the biggest entry point is getting a scanner. Now here's the hard part. You've got a lot of young dentists that work for other dentists that the dentist doesn't want to buy the scanner for them. And that's the frustrating part. So you still have to deal with young dentists that have to do analog until they own their practice or have the ability to buy their own scanner. But
I'd like
that's
to put
the
a little
biggest thing.
parenthesis on this though. I'd like to put a little parenthesis on this because
Yeah, please.
you're talking from somebody who comes with a lot of experience. And
Correct.
You have dialed down because you've learned, because you've evolved, because you've lectured, because you have had that exposure to perfecting basically all this digital knowledge, right? So I just want to be very clear, you know, in reality today, from what we see, a lot of people try to do what you're doing. They're not necessarily successful because, I mean, let's face it, the parenthesis is, if you can't take a traditional impression properly, there's no
100%.
way that you're going to take a digital impression properly. So a lot of people saying it is more precise. I agree with you 100%. But if you're doing it correctly to begin with.
100%. So here's the thing. There's two things with that. Garbage in, garbage out. Because people think that because you got a little bit of blood and saliva, you go in there. So what happens with me, listen, it still happens with me where I'll get a screenshot from the lab and go, and all of a sudden there's a bubble that I missed. And how do you miss it? Because you probably don't spend the time to look at it on a 20-inch screen, which is not hard to miss. Because your dentistry, as soon as you put it on the scanner on a screen, if you have a conscience, you're going to look at it and go, oh my God, that impression prep looks terrible. How do you miss it when it's sitting this big? But part of it is getting that feedback from the lab and go, what do you want to do with this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring the patient back and take a new impression. I goofed up. So that's part of the communication and the respect, right? Because what I used to get from the lab, I used to work with analog, and I shifted over after 22 and a half years of working with the lab because they didn't want to go digital. I stopped working. We're still friends, but we don't work together. But here's the thing. If there was a problem with a die, he would send me the die and send me a blade and a burr and said, oh, here, mark the margin and trim the die. So I had two choices. I would put my loops on and mark it, or I would just put it away, call the patient back and take a new impression. From a lab point of view, it's hard because some labs are not used to doing that. They're worried that they're going to lose a customer. So I think it goes both ways. I think the lab has to make the customer accountable. Hey, I don't want to do crap work. I don't want to figure it out. Because if I can get a nice, good impression or a scan, I'll guarantee my work for you.
Absolutely.
Would you give me something, right?
If it doesn't work,
so
you're going to lose that customer in any case. So you might as well be honest.
Right, exactly. But some labs don't do that, and you know that. So part of this is, yes, you're right. It's getting the right information. But once you get that information, there are more avenues of diagnosis and treatment that you have when you have that digital file. I think you'll agree with that.
Yes.
But it has to be done properly. You can't scan through blood, you can't scan through saliva. And the reality is we're a long ways away from that. That's ultrasound. And I don't think we're there yet. So yeah. But that's where I see there are so many things that digital will allow you to do in terms of saving time. Look, when I'm doing, I talked to my friend 2 days ago, and he was doing a 10-unit case. And then he called me later that evening and he said, oh man, everything went great, but I didn't capture all the margins and it was getting late. So I temporized and I'm bringing it back. Now here's one of the things that I get to do. If I'm doing an 8 or 10-unit case, I can scan 3 teeth. I don't have to stress about getting the cord out of all 8 teeth. I scan the 3, get it perfect. How long does it take? It takes, I don't know, 45 seconds, 30 seconds. Then I can isolate the other 3 teeth.
Yeah,
do that again.
Yeah, it makes it much easier.
And I can still do it.
Yeah.
And I don't have to waste all that. And I don't have to worry that when you pull that out, one cord didn't work and I got to take a new impression in the cost. So there are all those things.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. So now the other thing is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you brought up something that was really important, is getting the dentist to send it. Here's the other thing. I'm going to tell you something with my journey. When I made a conscious decision, and it was January of 2016, where I said, we're going to be almost totally digital. We still have some impression material for certain things, but we're going to really be conscious of doing that. I went through 8 labs before I found labs that actually understood digital. You also have to know that even if the lab says, hey, we're digital, you got to know the questions to ask, because not all labs are the same. And a lot of them really don't understand how to handle digital files and to do the digital workflow at a proper level.
Listen,
Period.
today it goes the same as a ceramist. I mean, you can have the same tools, whether it's ceramics, whether it's digital tools, software, etc. It's your knowledge in the end that will make those work.
Right.
So,
And so one of the things you got to do is you really have to interview the labs, just like you do with your specialists that you're working with. Find out if there's a philosophical fit. Find out what their experience is. Do they understand how to do certain things a certain way? Because I found out the hard way.
a lot of people
all
are
of a
still
sudden
figuring it out. Believe it or not, even
I know it
today,
is.
you know, it's
I
some
know it
people are
is.
still wondering, should I get? I mean, you're talking about dentists not getting an intraoral scanner, but I can tell you,
Yeah.
I know labs that don't even have a scanner. Forget about.
No, I got that.
So
And
I
you know,
mean,
part
there's
of it is,
yeah,
yeah,
there's people that are
so it goes both ways,
exactly.
is
Yeah.
understanding what you can do. And if you and you know what, now we have the ability from even 4 or 5 years ago, where if you're a small lab, like, part of the problem is a lot of people have this built-in relationship with a lab technician over the years, and they're scared to break away. Okay, so they'll sit and work with the person, and the next thing you know, you'll get a printed model from God knows where, and then they're trying to actually, cast a gold crown on a printed model that you don't even know if the model is dimensionally accurate.
Yeah.
And then you're wondering why you're doing all these adjustments, and you got open margins, and you're burnishing gold, or why the Emax jiggles around, and because they're trying to fit something. Sometimes you just got to break loose and go, you know what? It's time for me to fly the coop and start with someone else. It's not easy.
Look, the relationship is very important, but it's important for labs to advance and, up the knowledge.
Well, both parties need to evolve
So
at the same
time. If you have one that's evolving
Otherwise,
and the other
it's
one
not
that's
gonna
stuck, obviously that's not going to work.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So what I wanted to ask you earlier is, because we're talking about digital impressions, digital intraoral scanners, etc. Any favorites and why?
Oh gosh, you know what? I've been fortunate over the last 10 plus years to clinically in my practice be able to try about 7 different scanners. So I've tried several versions of Trios. I've got Carestream right now. I have the TrueDepth scanner that's unfortunately collecting dust, because right now it's the only powder one. So was fantastic when we were using it. And I've got also the iTero right now. I haven't had a chance to try the Prime scan except at just on a benchtop. It's great. Honestly, I don't right now. Why did I choose iTero? I chose iTero because it was one of those things right now. It's not like I was doing a lot of Invisalign. We've added that workflow. I like the smile design part of that. And I honestly, I got a pretty good price on it compared to what I was getting with a couple of the other scanners. So that was part of it. But if I'm telling people what to get, I would look at 3Shape. I would look at iTero. I would look at Carestream, and I would look at Prime Scan. And it doesn't mean the other ones in the market won't work well. They all do. So what I always tell people is, if you're going to implement it and you're also going to delegate some of the duties to your assistants and hygienists and clinical team, get them involved a little bit, because, let them look at the software, how you put things in, enter information in. What does it feel like in their hands? My assistants scan, all my hygienists scan. We scan every adult patient in our practice. It's part of our diagnostic exam. So my hygienists get an extra 10 minutes, which is plenty of time to do an upper and lower scan, put it up on the screen, and sit, and I can talk to you about the condition and the occlusion and everything. And we can go back to other ones. So I would involve the team. I would also talk to the lab. I wouldn't let the lab 100% dictate, but I would go, look, I'm going to be getting this scanner. Can you receive the files? 5 years ago, it was hard because there's all these extra dongle fees. Now we're slowly starting to see them go away. But can you receive, are you using exocad 3Shape zircons on? Can you receive the information into your software? Can you design restorative? Can you design digital smile design? Can you do implant planning? And can you receive our file that way? Those are important workflows, because if I want to work with you, I don't want to have a workaround. I want to be able to just send the information and get that. So I would talk to the team. I would look at what my goals are with the scanner, and then I would look at the lab and pair all three of them. But those are 4 scanners you can't go wrong with. And there are other scanners, but I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I love some of the features that, I have the iTero Element. I don't have the 5D. I have seen and played around with the 3Shape one. Boy, it's got some great features as well. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those 2 scanners. And I love the CareStream. It's kind of cool. It's got a lot of really nice features. And I like the fact that it's completely open. I can do whatever I want with that scan.
Yeah, that's
immediately.
A fun part. Yeah.
I can send it anywhere in the world. Yeah.
And let's for the record also, I mean, a lot of people ask me this question, probably you get that question. I think the technology has gotten to a point where they're all pretty accurate. I mean, okay,
100%.
for sure there must be some that are a little bit more accurate than others, but I don't think to the point where it really matters or makes any difference. Everything.
I agree with you. You're splitting hairs. Bye, ladies. Some of the team's leaving, so I just think bye. Yeah, I think you're splitting hairs after a little while. So when people are going, oh no, I got this or I got that. Look, I got to tell you one thing. I had E4D for 8 years. Worked great. Did a lot of chairside. As I got busier with lecturing and traveling and working a little less, the amount of time I had to spend was I didn't want to invest it. So I moved away from the in-office workflow, but it works great. And I think that if you're going to do an in-office workflow, you're probably looking at Sirona or CareStream, because their workflows are they're pretty good. Yeah, I should say Romexis is good as well. But
I think it's pretty much the same. It used to be different back in the days because they were tied into their model manufacturing centers. So
correct.
would go with one or the other depending if you like the models.
Terrible. I remember those models. They were terrible.
Like the models that iTero used to mill, and well, they still do, but
no, I'm talking about the Sirona.
The Sirona models, like they all had their pros and cons, and then but now everything's open. So
you can print it yourself, or not
or model-less,
like
Dr. Shah does.
Yeah, I've been model-less for, like I said, like over 4 years. Going to be closing in on 5.
But you take away a parameter.
Yeah.
You take away
it's been great, because it's just everything's dialed in. They know exactly what I want. It's locked in. Same thing with the single implants. It just drops in. I can capture the emergence profile. Everything's it's just perfect.
Because you've done also the work to get the parameters, because it doesn't just
I mean, it's not going to happen in the first try, but you got to go through 4 or 5 of them. You sit and talk to the lab and you figure out your parameters. You capture, like, for example, when I'm doing a single implant and I've got a custom healing abutment, I basically will have that custom healing abutment. I take that custom healing abutment, my assistant hands me that scanner. So within 3 to 5 seconds, I'm scanning it.
Before it collapses.
Now it is not going to happen in an analog world where it's going to take a minimum of 1 to 2 minutes. It's not going to happen. But I get within 5 seconds, I'm scanning it. Then I put the scan body in. It doesn't matter if it collapses a little bit. I move on to the next one.
No personalized transfers. No way. I mean, it does help a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, having said that, you got to have a lab that understands how to superimpose that image and still design that crown.
Yeah.
That's not complicated anymore, but
you're saying it's not complicated, but not all labs can do that.
Oh, well, it is what it is. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's talk about digital smile design. So you love digital smile design. I love digital smile design. What is it that makes, I mean, what excites you about it, and how does that change the way you do things?
With your patient, like how does it change your planning?
You know what? It gives the patient another layer of assurance and confidence as to what we can do. You know, what do patients want? They want to know, is it going to hurt? Are they going to get the results that they want? What if I don't do the treatment? What's the downside? What is it going to cost? But, you know, one of the things that that I think is important is that you want to, my lecture yesterday for Seattle Study Club was about interdisciplinary treatment planning, and about also being like diagnosing the treatment accurately and being predictable. It's all about the planning. And I think if you plan everything, the work, the hard work comes from all the planning. Then the executing, if you've planned everything, is a lot easier. And you've got to plan it. Like if you and I can sit down and work through, well, what are the preps going to look like? What are the minimum requirements for the material that you want to choose, Paresh? Hey, you want to use feldspathic? Well, here, this is what we need. What's the color of the tooth underneath there? Well, this is what we need for thickness. Feldspathic's not going to work because you got C3 on the bottom. So now I want you to prep the teeth more. We're going to not be doing feldspathic. This is the restoration. This is the type of prep. And we work through that. Well, why not work through that ahead of time, discuss that, and be prepared with a guide to be able to show the patient also with a mock-up from a virtual design, what is it going to look like? And you can do the mock-up two ways. We could do it additive, or you can actually put it in your software and prep the teeth just like you would on plaster, and then do a digital smile design. Those are two different ways. Mm-hmm. And if you do it the second way, now I've got, like Galip Gurel has, I've got one of those templates to prep through. And I only have to prep what I need to prep to be able to give you the right consistent reduction, correct? Mm-hmm. So the digital smile design process allows us to be able to look at the entire face, look at the lip dynamics, look at the teeth, to be able to have myself in the lab plan our case. If we're involving perio, we're involving ortho, we can now look at what it looks like in the face, not on a plaster model that we're holding.
Oh yeah, that we have no idea. I mean, we get models,
right? You have no idea,
great,
right? And you know what? We did.
Occlusal plane can be like this because it's straight on the model, but not
right.
Yeah.
And we did that for years.
Yeah.
But now we're in a world where we have the ability to be able to do that. Now, granted, we may not have that in some of the third world countries right now. And I get that, but you know what? There are apps. So even if there's someone, you know, I've got some friends that are practicing in India in rural areas, and they don't have a high-end practice, but they're still trying to do as much as they can, but they can at least grab an app, take a picture, and at least plan something. They don't have to do the big fancy one. So we have the ability, but that's what I love about it, because now the communication is real, because we have hard data. We don't just have a picture sitting on the counter. You actually have the photo in the software. You actually have real data points from an STL file. If I send you a cone beam, you can even put in there and we can plan an implant with the surgeon, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I love. But the smile design part of it is now you can generate me a prep guide, or you can generate me a mock-up that I can try in the mouth on a complex case. With things less than 6 units, I do a direct mock-up with composite right in the mouth. But if it's something more than that, I want you to do it, because it just takes me too long.
Yeah, for sure. And
yeah.
For the again, another little parenthesis on that, because we spoke about that not too long ago. I find there's a big advantage for smile design. You know, pictures, I guess, believe it or not, as fast as things are going, is back in the past. I think today it has to be a 3D scan, because you're trying
Absolutely.
to match a 2D picture with a 3D STL model or scan or whatever it is. And I find that there's always a little bit of a room of error. And it's different than trying to actually match a patient's 3D facial scan into a 3D STL of their mouth. I mean, now you're talking about precision. So I just, I wish more people would invest in getting a 3D facial scan.
Well, you know what? It doesn't cost a tremendous amount a year. What's like the Bellis 3D app, you can do that. And if you want to just get a basic scan, right, you can do that on the phone. I don't think it costs a large amount. You can get a subscription for the year. Ivoclar has theirs as well. Mm-hmm. So there are a few of those apps that are available, but the Bellis one is probably, you're familiar with that because I think you've used it, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't have it, but I have received from it. Yes.
Right. And you find that handy,
I find
right?
it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's better than a
Yeah.
picture, honestly. I mean, at that
Yeah.
point, again, I mean, if you're going with which scanner is more precise for a facial scan, who cares? Because from a picture, you're light years ahead. So
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
so it's what makes sense, I guess, financially for you. What makes sense.
Yeah. And you could take 2 scans. You could just take one, just a regular smiling one, and then you could take one with the retractor and full. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as you say, and then put in a CBCT. You can do so many things. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
Excellent.
a little thing I wanted to mention because I find lately there's
I
more and
agree.
more demand for that, and it's something I want to put out there to people is start, if you want to get into 3D smile design, try and add in your budget maybe a 3D scanner, because yes, already a camera is going to cost you what, a DSLR, if you don't have one, it's going to cost you a kit, maybe $3,000-$4,000. Might as well invest
Right.
a digital scanner as well, a facial scanner. So,
Right.
yeah, it was just a
I
little thing I
agree.
wanted to add. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in your lectures, you help dentists transition patients to more complex cases.
So
what
here,
would you recommend?
honestly, the best
start to do more complex cases.
Ortho. Get the teeth in the right spot. There's 2 ways to do it. When you've got occlusal plane issues and you've got crowding and everything, there's only 2 ways. You either prep all the teeth to change the vertical, or you put the teeth in the right spot. And one of the best ways to do it in terms of minimally invasive dentistry, you know, like John Coyce always says, the best dentistry is no dentistry. And that means if we can get the teeth in the right spot and only prepare or do additive dentistry on the teeth we need to, that's the best way. What I've found over the years is I've been able to do comprehensive dentistry by getting my orthodontist to put the teeth in the right spot, stabilize the occlusion, keep the spaces open. And that's when you can do single tooth dentistry now. You can do 1 crown at a time. You can work with insurance. You can do 1 implant at a time. You can do 1 arch, 1 quadrant, doesn't matter. So put the teeth in the right spot, and then you break everything up into segments. Okay. It's not rocket science. So my acceptance rate of patients doing ortho is quite high. And then they're like, oh, because everyone's just so starry-eyed about, oh, I got to get all these crowns done or all these veneers done. Well, okay, so let's say I do all of that, but it takes me 5 years to do it. I'm still making the money. I'm making it over 5 years rather than 1 month. But the patient's better off, and it fits the patient's life, and they don't have to worry about, because if they can't afford $15,000, maybe they can afford $3,000. Maybe they get their ortho done, and then maybe they can do $3,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
There's not, you know, so part of it is understanding how to manage occlusion and why teeth are in the wrong. A lot of pre-prosthetic ortho really works. Sometimes it's just little orthodontic movements with aligners over a 6 or 7 month period to get the teeth in the right spot. So now I can send it to you and go, you know what, let's just do some very thin minimal prep veneers rather than cutting these teeth down drastically and getting into dentin. Why do you want to do that?
Especially for veneers.
Do 6, right? And then all of a sudden you can do a little contact lens veneer. Mm-hmm. Right? Or you can do some bonding and transition them into veneers. But that's where, you know, so it's just planning. That's how I try and get people to look at, okay, are the teeth in the right spot? What are we trying to accomplish? And part of the way to do that is going through this smile design process to actually visualize it and also show the patients the possibilities. Once they go, oh, well, this is what I want. Okay, there's 2 ways to do it. Well, how do you open up the bite? Well, you either, like what I just sent you on that case. Well, what do you do? Well, I got to open up the bite. Well, how do you do that? Well, one is putting braces on and intruding all the teeth. The other is prepping all the teeth. What would you like to do? But if you show them what the possibility is at the end, then you can work backwards and go, okay, well, this is what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And that's why it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So the last question, I think we already answered.
We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but we were wondering, what are your main, factor or characteristics that you're looking for when you're choosing a dental lab. So I know.
Oh man,
we spoke about it for digital, but if we take out the digital away, take out digital, so they're digital, great. What else?
so one of the, you know, this is the same as what I would do when I'm looking to work with a specialist, is working. Okay, and this was another thing that I always try and teach. I think the term, and this is, I didn't create this. This is one of my mentors, is an orthodontist, Rick Robley, that brought this up in a book that I read of his 25 years ago in some publications. There's a difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. Multi means I'm sending you the stuff, I'm sending it off to the ortho, I'm sending it off to the endo. I don't give any of you a treatment plan, and you do your thing separately. And then you just send it back. I go, just do a crown, A3. 8 veneers, A3. Or I send it off to the oral surgeon, say, put 3 implants in. Don't tell them anything. And then you get it back and everything's in the wrong spot and the shade doesn't look good and everything doesn't look good. Interdisciplinaries, where we're sitting and we're talking and collaborating and we're discussing how we get that result for the patient. And we're actually discussing it. And so what I look for in a lab is the collaboration of looking and going, okay, you know, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do based on the patient. Can you achieve this? And you might go, okay, you know, we can do this, but have you thought of this? Because if you want to do this material, I don't know if it's going to work unless we do this. Mm-hmm. And having that discussion, and also owning things. Like if something just doesn't go right, let's not sit and blame the dentist or the dentist blame the lab. Just go, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? Let's get this done. And then next time, what do we do to avoid it? Because I've had situations before where it was just getting to the point where each person is wanting to prove their point that no, the other person's wrong. And it just doesn't work well.
That's not the point. Absolutely not.
Right?
Yeah.
And so part of it is sitting down and going, okay, are you open? Is the lab open to learning new things and evolving? From a lab point of view, I want to have the ability that the lab will go, look, I haven't tried this material yet. I'm open to trying this material, but let me contact the manufacturer. Let me find out what proper parameters. For instance, I did this probably 12, 14 years ago, and there was a point in time where 3M had come out with this lava ceramic. Remember that? When it first came out, it came out really fast. It was a good product, but there were problems with firing times, and they weren't training the labs properly in the firing cycle. So porcelain was chipping.
Yeah, they weren't.
And so you do these lava crowns, but they weren't. But it wasn't because the material was bad. It was because the firing cycle was different with the coefficient of expansion and contraction, and they weren't taught that. They just rushed it out. So all of a sudden you're doing this. But I wanted to do some lava crowns, but the lab that I worked with locally said, listen, never use the product. Let me contact the manufacturer, find out how to use it properly so we can get a good result, rather than just throwing it in there. That's an example. It's just working together, mm-hmm. and also being able to be comfortable enough to call the dentist and go, you know what, this isn't working. Can you redo this? Yeah. And having a mutual thing. So that's what it is. You know, for me, I want a lab that's continually evolving, that is understanding the science and the technology well, that wants to understand the challenges that the restorative dentist has when we're sitting here trying to, you know, you got a small mouth and all this saliva, and why sometimes we have challenges, and to help us troubleshoot that way, and vice versa.
Well, you know that there's 2 types of dentists, and I believe that, I mean, there's one type I don't want to work with. We don't want to work with. Some labs do, but we don't. The one type is that believes that a lab is just a supplier, where they can just send stuff, get it back, have no relationship whatsoever, have no input in any case, just, you know, execute. And then there's the other type of dentist, like yourself, which is, we are a team. We work together. It's just as important. What we do, what you do, we work together. Why? In order to satisfy that patient. That's plain and simple how it is.
But I think
I agree.
2 main things that we are understanding from our dentists that they really appreciate from us and that we try to do for each case is, first of all, never judge, because you don't know what it took
for sure.
on the clinical side to get this
impression or disc prep, or we don't know what happened before or what goes on in on the chair. So no judgment.
True.
And second of all, we always have their back. So if they made a mistake on the prescription for the type of material, and we notice that if we follow through or just execute, it's going to fail, we have the responsibility to have
communicate
that, and then
it's
important. I agree.
So that's what it is. But as you said, some people are afraid to do that, and it all depends. It all depends, but it works for us, so it works for you. So that's what's important. Listen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It was. I think our viewers will be very happy. I mean, a lot of good and useful information, practical information, and that's the whole point of what we do.
Excellent.
We have not spoke about your impressive background, but in our episode webpage, we're gonna have your bio information and also your contacts. What is the best contact for you? I know you're very present on Instagram.
Probably Instagram's the easiest way. And otherwise my email.
So we'll have all that in the webpage. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
being with us.
Yeah, it was fun.
I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
You have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you'll be with us on our next episode. This recording is available on YouTube and also uploaded as a podcast on iTunes. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our show. If you wish, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook with the handle @Styledent Lab. For questions, comments, or suggestions about the show, please visit styledent.com/talks, where you will also find the show notes and links to the subject we talked about today. Members of the dental community, we thank you, and we hope to see you next time on Styledent Talks.